Despite its breathtaking natural beauty and high standard of living, Norway remains one of the most sparsely populated countries in Europe, with about 70% of its land largely uninhabited. Covering an area of around 385,000 square kilometers, larger than Germany or the United Kingdom, Norway has a population of only about 5.5 million people. This means the country has one of the lowest population densities on the continent, and far below that of neighboring Sweden or Denmark. This striking imbalance is not simply the result of low population growth, but reflects a combination of dramatic geography, limited arable land, and centuries of historical development shaped by environmental constraints. Understanding why so much of Norway appears empty requires a closer look at the natural and historical forces that have shaped where people can live. 1. Mountains and highlands. Norway's landscape is shaped by a combination of ancient geological processes that have created some of the most dramatic terrain in Europe. A large portion of the country consists of mountains and high plateaus formed by the uplift and collision of tectonic plates over hundreds of millions of years. The Scandinavian mountains run along the country's backbone, producing vast stretches of steep slopes, rocky ridges, and deep valleys. Approximately 32% of Norway's land area lies above the tree line, altitudes where the combination of thin, rocky soils and short growing seasons prevents trees and most other vegetation from establishing permanent cover. In these alpine zones, exposed bedrock and loose debris predominate, creating environments that are not only ecologically fragile but also hostile to human habitation. Even where soil does accumulate, it is often shallow, nutrient poor, and easily eroded, making it unsuitable for sustained farming. This expansive alpine and subalpine terrain imposes severe constraints on Norway's economic activities and settlement patterns. Steep slopes and unstable rock faces form natural barriers that make building roads and tunnels technically complex and prohibitively expensive. Transportation corridors are limited to the few valleys where passage is possible, leading to isolated communities that historically relied on waterways for connection to the rest of the country. 2. Hundreds of fjords. Adding to the ruggedness are the country's iconic fjords, hundreds of narrow, deep inlets that were carved into the landscape by immense glaciers during the last ice age. As glaciers advanced and retreated over thousands of years, their sheer weight and slow movement gouged U-shaped valleys into the bedrock, cutting deep below sea level and filling with ocean water when the ice finally melted. These fjords can extend tens or even hundreds of kilometers inland, forming waterways bounded by sheer cliffs that often rise vertically from the water's edge to towering heights. The rock walls around many fjords are so steep and unstable that they leave almost no flat terrain along their margins. Although these fjords are among Norway's most spectacular natural features, drawing tourists from around the world, they also fragment the coastline in ways that present persistent challenges for settlement and development. The communities along these fjords historically relied on boats as their primary means of travel and trade, because overland routes were either impractical or entirely impassable. 3. Glaciers, moors, and rivers. Beyond the mountains and fjords, substantial parts of Norway are occupied by glaciers, wetlands, and an intricate network of rivers and lakes. Glaciers remain active in many regions, particularly in the west and the north, where massive ice fields and outlet glaciers slowly move and reshape the terrain beneath them. This continuous glacial movement grinds down bedrock into loose debris called moraine, creating unstable surfaces prone to landslides and erosion. As glaciers melt during warmer periods, meltwater can rapidly flood adjacent valleys, washing away soil and making the ground even less reliable for construction or agriculture. Wetlands, peat bogs, and mires are widespread in low-lying areas, coastal plains, and high plateaus, where poor drainage allows water to accumulate year-round. These saturated landscapes consist of soft, waterlogged soil with thick layers of decaying organic matter, which cannot bear heavy loads and will shift or sink if built upon. Meanwhile, Norway's dense network of rivers and lakes acts as both a defining feature and a constraint. Countless rivers, some fed by glacial melt and others by mountain runoff, carve deep channels through valleys and plateaus, fragmenting the terrain into isolated sections of higher ground. Lakes, which often fill former glacial basins, occupy significant portions of otherwise level land. further reducing the area available for development. 4. Harsh climate. Norway's harsh climate results from a combination of its high northern latitude, rugged topography, and exposure to both Arctic and Atlantic influences. A part of the country lies above the Arctic Circle, leading to long, dark winters with weeks of polar night, extremely low temperatures, and short, cool summers that limit agriculture and vegetation growth. The Scandinavian mountains act as a natural barrier, preventing warmer, moist air from reaching the inland regions and creating sharp contrast between the mild, wet coastal areas and the colder, drier continental interior. While the North Atlantic Current helps keep parts of the western coastline relatively temperate compared to other places at the same latitude, inland and northern regions lack this moderating effect, experiencing severe cold, deep snow cover, and prolonged frost. The meeting point of Arctic air masses and moist Atlantic low-pressure systems also causes highly unpredictable weather, including sudden snowstorms, freezing rain, and strong winds that intensify the feeling of cold and make travel and daily life challenging. Together, these factors create a climate marked by extreme seasonal variation, frequent storms, and prolonged periods of cold that have profoundly shaped Norway's settlement patterns, economy, and way of life. 5. Limited arable land. Besides, Norway has very limited arable land, largely due to its mountainous terrain, thin and rocky soils, and harsh climate. Only about 3 to 4% of the country's total area is suitable for cultivation, making it one of the lowest proportions of farmland in Europe. Much of the landscape consists of steep slopes, exposed bedrock, or high plateaus where soil is too shallow or infertile to support crops. Even in lower-lying areas and valleys, frequent glacial activity in the past left behind rocky debris and uneven surfaces that are difficult to farm efficiently. In many regions, wetlands, peat bogs, and cold temperatures further restrict agricultural potential. As a result, Norway's agriculture has traditionally focused on small-scale farming, pasture for livestock, and hardy crops that can withstand short-growing seasons. The scarcity of fertile land has shaped Norwegian society for centuries, concentrating settlements in coastal plains and river valleys where soil is deeper and the climate is milder, while vast inland and upland areas remain sparsely populated or completely undeveloped. 6. Settlement patterns. As a result of these geographical and climatic constraints, Norway has one of the lowest population densities in the world, around 15 people per square kilometer. Historically, most communities developed along the coast and in sheltered river valleys, where milder weather, access to the sea, and relatively flat, fertile land made farming, fishing, and trade possible. The deeply indented coastline, with its countless fjords and islands, encouraged the growth of small, dispersed settlements rather than large, continuous urban areas. Inland regions dominated by mountains, plateaus, and harsh winters remained sparsely populated, with only isolated farms and seasonal settlements. Over time, industrialization and economic development reinforced this pattern. Coastal cities like Oslo, Bergen, Stavanger, and Trondheim expanded into major urban centers, while much of the interior stayed largely undeveloped. Over 80% of the Norwegian population lives in urban areas. 7. Protected nature and wilderness. A significant part of Norway's land remains undeveloped because the country has made a deliberate choice to protect its natural landscapes and biodiversity. Large areas are designated as national parks, nature reserves, and other conservation zones to preserve ecosystems, wildlife habitats, and the cultural heritage of traditional land use. Today, Norway has over 40 national parks on the mainland and Svalbard, covering vast mountain ranges, glaciers, forests, wetlands, and Arctic tundra. These protected areas often overlap with regions that are already difficult to inhabit due to steep terrain and poor soils, reinforcing their status as wilderness. Strict regulations limit construction, infrastructure development, and commercial exploitation in these zones to maintain their ecological integrity. As a result, much of the country's dramatic scenery, towering peaks, pristine fjords, and remote plateaus remains largely untouched. This commitment to conservation not only safeguards Norway's unique natural heritage, but also contributes to its low population density, and the perception that much of the land is empty, even though it plays a vital role in environmental protection, outdoor recreation, and national identity. In the end, while Norway's dramatic landscape, harsh climate, and limited arable land have long posed serious obstacles to widespread settlement and large-scale agriculture, these same challenges have also helped shape a resilient, innovative society. Rather than being held back by their environment, Norwegians have learned to adapt, drawing on maritime traditions, harnessing hydropower from rushing rivers, and later developing one of the world's most successful oil and gas industries. Careful stewardship of natural resources and transparent, forward-looking governance have allowed Norway to transform its wealth into a robust social welfare system that guarantees healthcare, education, and economic security for all citizens. Today, despite vast stretches of uninhabited wilderness, Norway consistently ranks among the richest nations on Earth in terms of GDP per capita, living standards, and human development. That's why many people still choose Norway to live. Thank you for tuning in. If you liked this video, feel free to share your favorite fact in the comments below. I'll see you in the next video.